Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Morning in Savannah arrived slowly, like a curtain lifting rather than a switch turning on. The air carried the scent of wet oak bark and warm bread from the corner bakery 2 streets away. People greeted each other by first name here, and most routines never changed. At exactly 6:20 a.m., Lena Whitmore stepped out of her modest white townhouse holding a small toolbox and a cloth grocery bag. The mailman raised a hand to her without breaking stride. The florist across the street already had a kettle boiling because Lena fixed her refrigerator every spring before it failed in summer heat. Nothing about her suggested wealth, authority, or power, and that was precisely how she preferred it. She repaired Mrs. Calder's porch light first. The elderly woman tried to pay her with coins wrapped in tissue paper, and Lena accepted only a single mint candy instead. She never allowed gratitude to turn into obligation. By 8 a.m., she was at the historical library in the archive room, cataloging letters from the 1920s. Tourists often assumed she was a volunteer retiree. No one noticed the tablet beside her displaying global commodity movements updating every 10 seconds, or the discreet earpiece hidden beneath her hair. Her voice remained calm while she whispered instructions about port transfers in Rotterdam and textile routing through Singapore, conversations spoken in the same tone she used to ask someone to pass salt. Across the city, Darius Cole rehearsed a presentation in a mirrored office tower. His construction firm, Cole Urban Development, had recently gained attention for mid-scale housing renovations. He practiced confidence the way actors practice accents, deliberately and often. He liked the feeling of being watched. The admiration he received from investors filled a private fear he never named, the terror of insignificance. When colleagues asked about his wife, he smiled vaguely. "She keeps the home stable," he said, as though describing insulation inside walls, useful but invisible. That evening he brought business partner Trevor Mays home. Trevor carried expensive wine and the casual curiosity of a man assessing another man's life. Lena prepared dinner quietly, listening while they discussed zoning disputes and supply shortages. Twice she almost corrected a flawed assumption about import pricing, and twice she chose silence. When Darius joked, "Lena doesn't follow the business side, she hates numbers," Trevor laughed comfortably. Lena placed the plates down with steady hands. 20 minutes later, she sent a message from her watch: steel shipment rerouted to prevent the shortage Darius had complained about. Upstairs, a locked study remained the only room Darius never entered. He had asked once years ago, and Lena answered simply, "Family records." He lost interest immediately. Inside, however, a wall of screens mapped global assets across continents. She held controlling authority in layered corporations invisible to casual inquiry. Adrian Pike appeared on one screen, reviewing acquisition confirmations. She listened, gave minimal instructions, and closed the call. Her face returned instantly to calm domestic neutrality when she stepped back into the hallway. Days moved quietly, but outcomes changed dramatically around Darius. City inspections delayed themselves, licensing approvals arrived early, disputes dissolved. He interpreted the pattern as momentum, proof of his growing influence. Confidence turned into pride, and pride slowly sought admiration outside familiarity. He met Vanessa Klein at an architectural networking lounge overlooking the river. Vanessa specialized in attaching herself to upward trajectories. She understood compliments as investments and delivered them with precision. She praised Darius's vision, laughed at his mild jokes, and listened intensely when he described projects. By the end of the evening, she had convinced him he was on the verge of elite recognition. Late nights followed. At home, Lena noticed schedule deviations immediately. Not through suspicion, through data. Her private security division flagged repeated location overlaps. She neither confronted nor reacted. Instead she observed behavior patterns the way she evaluated markets, patiently and completely. Margaret Cole's charity branch came soon after. The long dining table glittered with crystal and expectation. Vanessa sat beside Darius openly while relatives watched Lena carry dishes between kitchen and dining room. Margaret discussed donations loudly, praising contributors while never once acknowledging Lena's quiet support that had funded the charity anonymously for years. Vanessa received compliments for style. Lena received instructions to bring tea. During the meal, Darius announced securing a redevelopment contract. Applause followed. Lena knew the contract existed only because her company approved financing through intermediaries. She smiled politely, congratulating him like everyone else. As weeks passed, Darius's tone toward her changed subtly, not cruel yet, but diminishing. Success convinced him she slowed his ascent. Vanessa reinforced that belief carefully, suggesting a man aiming higher needed a partner who matched his public image. He began excluding Lena from events. One afternoon at home, Darius asked her to sign a financial document he barely explained. She read it once, memorized it entirely, and signed without objection. 2 hours later, Adrian Pike quietly restructured 17 connected agreements across 3 states. The family dinner was scheduled for a Sunday evening. The dining room filled with layered conversations and polite tension. Margaret arranged seating deliberately. Vanessa sat beside Darius. A second plate remained empty where Lena usually sat until Margaret gestured toward the far end of the table. The atmosphere already carried decision rather than discussion. Dinner progressed with pointed remarks about ambition and presentation. Finally, Darius slid a pen and paper across the table toward Lena. His voice held forced calm. "You need to apologize to Vanessa for the uncomfortable situation you've created." The room watched her. She neither argued nor questioned. She took the paper, wrote carefully, folded it, and placed it into a plain white envelope she had brought in her bag earlier that day. She set it before Darius. No anger, no tears, only quiet completion. Vanessa smirked lightly, believing victory had shape and timing. But Lena's eyes held something different, not hurt, not submission. Closure. Within 15 minutes, Adrian Pike executed the document contained in that envelope. Across the city, automatic notices began transmitting to banks, property offices, leasing authorities, and corporate registries. The consequences had already started moving long before anyone opened the letter. The dining room conversation resumed only after Darius tapped the envelope against the table twice, almost playfully. He did not open it immediately. The attention itself mattered more to him than its contents. Vanessa leaned closer, her smile thin and victorious, expecting embarrassment written in ink. Margaret watched with satisfaction, certain the matter had been settled in favor of appearances. Lena lifted her glass of water, took a small sip, and asked if anyone wanted dessert. Across the city, the first notification reached Howard Finch, the financial controller for Cole Urban Development. He was finishing his nightly reconciliation when a red banner appeared across his accounting dashboard: Primary Leasing Authority revoked. He frowned, assuming a system error. Seconds later another alert arrived: Operating credit line suspended pending ownership verification. He dialed Darius immediately. Darius silenced the call. Back at the table, Vanessa urged him, "Go on, read it." He tore open the envelope. The document inside was not an apology. It was a legal separation of financial interest, effective immediately. Beneath that, a notification that all jointly utilized business properties were owned by entities withdrawing operational permission within 48 hours. At the bottom was a signature he recognized: Adrian Pike, attorney of record, and beneath that, Lena Whitmore, majority authority holder. "What is this?" Darius laughed once, expecting absurdity to dissolve tension. Howard called again. Then Trevor. Then the bank. He finally answered. His expression changed slowly, the way daylight fades, not sudden, but irreversible. The development project he had celebrated 2 weeks earlier was locked. Access credentials invalidated. Payment accounts frozen until ownership clarification. He repeated, "That's impossible," 3 times, each softer than the last. Margaret demanded explanation. Vanessa's confidence fractured into confusion. Lena folded her napkin neatly beside her plate. "I signed nothing new tonight," she said calmly. Everything was already completed. Silence filled the room, heavier than argument ever could. Morning arrived with a different atmosphere in the city. Construction gates at Darius's main site did not open. Workers gathered, waiting for authorization codes that never came. Security informed Trevor that the land registry no longer recognized coal urban development as a permitted occupant. He drove directly to the courthouse, believing paperwork mistakes common to bureaucracy. The clerk showed him ownership filings layered through holding groups, all tracing upward to a single controlling company, Whitmore Holdings Consortium. Trevor stared at the document for a long time before asking quietly, "Who is Lena Whitmore?" Meanwhile, Darius rushed between offices attempting resolution. Each conversation ended the same way: legal authority superseded verbal agreements. Contracts he believed permanent were conditional. Financing he believed earned was allocated. The deeper he investigated, the clearer the pattern became. Every major opportunity in the past 3 years had originated from the same invisible benefactor. He returned home near evening, not angry now but unsettled. Lena watered the garden as she always did. He stood on the porch, unsure whether to confront or question. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked. "You never asked what I actually do," she replied gently. News of halted projects spread quickly among investors and donors. Margaret's community center board called an emergency meeting when the annual anonymous grant failed to arrive for the first time in 9 years. She contacted the foundation liaison only to hear that the benefactor had chosen to redirect philanthropic priorities. The roof repair scheduled for winter would not happen. Heating upgrades halted. Staff salaries uncertain. Margaret called Lena for the first time without instruction in her voice. "Do you know anything about this?" she asked carefully. Lena answered, "Yes." Nothing more. 2 weeks later, the Legacy Civic Gala gathered the city's leadership. Darius attended because withdrawal would confirm failure. Vanessa insisted on accompanying him, convinced appearance could still salvage reputation. Whispers followed them, not accusations, just cautious distance people show around unstable structures. During the ceremony, the chairwoman introduced the recognition reserved for a benefactor who had funded scholarships, infrastructure repairs, and neighborhood housing for over a decade without public credit. The audience expected an old industrial family or retired magnate. Instead, the name announced was Lena Whitmore. For a moment no one moved. Darius's reaction was not shock alone but reconstruction, memories reorganizing into understanding, inspections that never failed, funding that appeared at perfect timing, contracts approved beyond expectation. Lena walked to the stage in the same calm manner she used to cross the street for groceries. She spoke briefly, not about success but about intention. This stability should exist quietly and help should not require performance. She thanked the city for allowing anonymous work to remain useful work. No triumph. No humiliation returned. Only truth stated plainly. Vanessa left the ballroom before applause ended. Legal processes completed within the following days. Without access to leased properties, Darius's company dissolved into asset liquidation. Trevor accepted employment elsewhere. Investors withdrew respectfully but firmly. Howard Finch transitioned records under court supervision, privately admitting the structure had never truly belonged to Darius. Margaret visited Lena personally. The pride she carried for years had nowhere to stand now. She apologized, not dramatically, simply and sincerely, after understanding the center's survival had depended entirely on the daughter-in-law she dismissed. Lena reinstated funding under new management, ensuring it would never again depend on family relationships. Darius requested one final conversation at the garden where Lena spent evenings reading. He no longer argued ownership or fairness. "I thought success meant being seen," he said. "And I thought love meant being known," she replied softly. They parted without hostility, only recognition that misunderstanding can live longer than affection if left unexamined. Months later, Lena moved to a smaller coastal home surrounded by wildflowers and open sky. Her companies continued operating through teams who rarely met her in person. Adrian Pike handled daily authority while she limited involvement to decisions that shaped long-term impact. The neighborhood knew her as a woman who shared produce from her garden and repaired broken hinges. Nothing outward suggested immense wealth. And that was finally the life she had intended from the beginning, a quiet existence where respect existed before revelation, and where power never again needed to prove itself to be believed. The city eventually forgot the scandal. But those who sat at that dinner table never forgot the moment they mistook silence for weakness, and learned it had been discipline all along. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.